Well, I understand that the common language is going to be English, so if somebody has some problems by understanding what I'm saying, just tell me and I will try to explain myself differently. Well, the first problem I was having this kind of explanations is exactly what Mikkel showed, who I am or what I am. It's true that when you look at the background of everybody, actually you have plenty of experiences, fields that you have to add one to the other in order to make the current identity of everyone. But in my case, I have to say that it's true. The last years of my life, I've been focusing myself on doing politics from the institutional point of view. And that's what I want to talk about today. But previously, I had a life too. And I had a student life, I had a teacher, professor, lecturer actually in that university, focused mainly on the international relations field. But I had, let's say, networking or activism life too. Actually, the reason why I was suggested or invited to go to politics was because for 10 years I've been coordinating campaigns all over Europe in terms of what we call peace and disarmament. We started at the national level, at Spanish level, with the transparency campaign for the arms trade. My main field of expertise comes from the pacifist movement and the disarmament movement. We started with a campaign in order to ask for more transparency to the arms export in Spain and all over Europe. Since then, we evolved to demanding a code of conduct of the arms export for Europe. That's important for what I'm going to explain afterwards. And then you probably heard about some specific similar campaigns based on landmines, small weapons, or nuclear issues, wherever. All have the same pattern. The expertise I could have in those campaigns, both coming from the activism and the lobbyism, if you want. I'm going to use very much the term lobbyism in the good sense of the term, but that's what we do. That's what we did, and that's what sometimes it needs to be done. And let's say the research or the analysis or the academy approach, the combination of those two things made us possible to reach politics or to reach politicians in order to change some of the problems we understood needed to be changed. Why I'm saying all this? Because there is a moment in my life that it's true. I change, let's say, hat. I change of responsibility, and if once I was demanding person of the politicians to do this or that, it's true, there is a moment where I became one of those that is being demanded by the people outside, be it scientists, be it activists, be it social movements, be it journalists, whatever, that demand you to do what is necessary to be done. To me, it's very important to have those different perspectives. Why? Because if I hadn't had the previous experience on 10 years teaching, lecturing, studying, doing research, doing activism, probably my job in the parliament for those 10 years would have been completely different of what it has been. And that's, to me, important. And the other way around, if you are really involved in, let's say, put it poetically, if you want, in changing the world, you need to confront with all the realities that have the key or some of the keys in order to make that you pretend to do, which is changing the world. To be more concrete, with Mikkel, we've been working for those years on a specific issue, which is the what we call the reform of the fisheries policy in the European Union. Well, that's a very concrete aspect. That's a very concrete arena. That's something I did not have concrete expertise before I was member of the European Parliament, but because I had the experience of doing lobbyism and doing advising to politicians before I was myself a politician, I knew what I wanted to do as politician. Why I'm saying this? actually establishing walls, establishing borders, establishing limits is very difficult in the times we live in now. And to me, the right approach to do is making connections on different arenas, different spheres, different, let's say, pieces of the system in order to make the system evolve towards a specific direction. The lessons I got from 10 years doing campaigns on disarmament munitions were basically at 3 levels. That's what I've been trying to apply it also in politics. After this personal introduction, I'm going to focus specifically on the job, don't worry. But I need to explain this in order that you understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. The 3 main lessons I learned basically on my previous period of politician was, 1, there is a huge need of focusing. It might seem that this is obvious. Well, it's not. Sometimes it's not. The main problem we sometimes have to face with is that we want to do everything, and we want to do everything now. Focusing is crucial. Coordinating all the efforts towards a specific goal is crucial to attain that goal. Let me put an example. In 1996, there were several campaigns from several organizations, from several activist groups and movements, asking for stopping the arms trade from Spain to other countries, and specifically asking some of them also for more transparency on the arms trade. Fine. The problem is that you have very individual demands. Put yourself in the role of a journalist, and you receive in a week or in a month 2, 3, 10, 20 press releases commenting on the specific campaign a group, a social movement, an organization is doing towards the same end. The impact of this is limited. That's easy to understand. Put all these campaigns together in one press release with the same goal, with the same targets, putting all them together behind the same platform. The impact this press release is going to have is hugely bigger than the one you had before. That seems obvious today. It was not that obvious 20 years ago. That's the first lessons I learned, and I'll explain afterwards why I'm saying this. Talking about networking, talking about creating platforms. The second lesson I learned, you need goals very well established and very well timed, which means short, medium, long term. You need sometimes to do things today in order to get what you want in 10, 20, 50 years term. Sometimes we miss the short-term activism. Sometimes we only focus on the long-term activism, on the global activism. And sometimes we need to do things today in order to be more capable tomorrow. The example I'm going to use here, again, comes from the arms trade. When in 96 we started the campaign, it was before, it was 94. We started with the campaign of the transparency on the arms trade. Obviously, for many organizations, that was too little ambitious. That was a too small campaign for something that was huge, which is the arms trade, the responsibility of the arms trade. But that was crucial. Why? Because one of the main problems we faced in that period, and we still face now, a bit less, but we still face. But thanks to that type of campaigns, I insist, we faced it a bit less. It was the knowledge of what, how much, when, and where weapons were traded to other parts of the world. Because by definition, by law, arms trade in Spain was secret. By law, arms trade in Spain was secret. This campaign succeeded to have this trade public. You know now who is sending what, what is being sent, when, and who is the buyer. Thanks to that campaign. Now, thanks to that information, it is possible to do all things. But if in that moment we did not do this, we would not be in the moment that we are now doing what we can do today, which is always, if you want, insufficient. It's always not enough. It's obviously too small compared to the huge, let's say, challenge we have in front of us. And third example, and here is what I am going today. If you want to be efficient on your activism, you need a good analysis. You cannot make good activism and good political lobbyism if you don't have scientists in the huge term, or in the huge sense of the term, working with you. Data, but not only relevant data. Good analysis is basic if you want to confront what we can call the beast, or the system, or the core of the system. Today, probably heard, starts in Davos, again, the Economical Forum. That's one of the places where lobbyism and this creation of the, let's say, core of the beast is being built. There is a lot of literature about this, that's true, but there is a lot of reality too. The fact that the perception that the big discussions, that the big decisions, the big networking in terms of the financial, economical, political height structures are taking those days in Davos is not for nothing. I mean, it's relevant at many levels. In order to confront this, you need good analysis. You need scientists. You need people who spend hours and hours and hours reading papers, working on their computers, analyzing data, processing data. That's not a minor issue. That's the third lesson I learned 20 years ago, and that's one of the lessons that during my period as MEP in the parliament, I tried always to remember. Nobody knows everything. Nobody. Everybody has a specific field of expertise. And sometimes even the daily job you have to confront with makes this expertise weakening. When you have to face 10, 20 topics, 20 subjects, 20 battles every day, completely different the ones from the other, even if you are somebody who is very capable, it's impossible to command all these battles with the same dignity that it deserves. That's another problem I'm gonna explain today. This means that it's crucial for somebody who is doing politics to have the concrete and the right connections with those outside of the institutions that is making the right analysis. That is why it's so important, from my point of view, to invest socially, publicly, and politically, in the huge sense of the term, in research, in analysis, in science. With this background, one day somebody thought that maybe this, let's say, this curriculum could be useful in the European Parliament. And I was invited to join the Green Group in the Parliament, in the European Parliament, in a moment 20 years, in that case 10 years ago, that was 2004. Well, there was the huge discussions about globalizations, about internalizations of the global movement, the social movement. You remember probably the Sao Paulo Forum and the Social Forum. Well, when you have been activist in all this type of meetings or forums, actually, well, you simply have a perception of reality a bit different of what is, well, normally perceived in some of the structures that have been doing politics until that moment. I'm talking about 2004, 2004. And, well, I was invited to join the Green Group. I went there with the personal, that's I had to say because that was a personal decision. I would only be in that responsibility for 10 years. That means two times 5 years term. which is, well, in the European Parliament, the mandates are of 5 years, which means that 2 times, that means 10 years. Well, that's fine. When you arrive to the Parliament, when I arrived to the Parliament, obviously my first ambitions, if I can say it that way, was to be influenced on the topics I was dealing with before. I was elected member of the Foreign Affairs Policies Committee, I'll explain you why, on the Security and Defense Subcommittee, and I started focusing on the issues I was somehow expert, let me put it, because nobody is never ever expert, really expert on anything, but that was a bit the topics I commanded to be the best. And I did specific actions on, in that moment we were campaigning for the international treaty on small arms control. It was also probably you heard about the cluster bombs, which is another type of bomb that is also now banned by international regulation, and one of the most important on converting the code of conduct of the EU arms exports to a common position which makes the instrument legally binding. That's not a minor issue. I mean, previously the code of conduct was a voluntary issue, was a non-binding instrument. Now, thanks to this, is a legally binding, which means that if somebody is not fulfilling the norms established in the code, you can process him. Obviously, it happens in all the countries. One thing is law, one thing is the norm. Completely different story is the implementation of the norms that we can come. First step is having the law. First step is having the norm, which does not mean the law is going to be respected. And then you need to react on the non-respect of the law. That's something that we were going to attend afterwards. When this was done, actually it happens, and that's what I will try to explain as well. That may be useful then to go to how decisions are taken in the European Parliament. I'm going to make a stop there. When you have limited resources and when you have limited capacity, that means when you're a small group, compared to the bigger groups that you have to confront with, you have a real and not easy to solve problem. You have to be in all the fronts, in all the battles, in all the debates that are taking place. Bigger groups can divide themselves and they can have expertise for each topic. This MEP is going to concentrate on that topic. This one is going to concentrate on that one. This one is going to concentrate on that one. When you are the only MEP of your group, you have to be in all the debates, which means that I have to talk about TTIP, I have to talk about GMOs, I have to talk about fisheries reform, I have to talk about restrictions of liberties in terms of using the airplanes because there is a terrorist attack in Paris, and then that means that the regulation of using the the planes is going to be more restricted. You have to know about all this. Each one of these topics is a complex one, and you cannot pretend to command the same way every one of these topics and to go to a debate with the involved people that knows much better than you these topics, that have all the information of these topics, that have all the examples and they have in their minds all the legal texts and all the legal bases on these texts, and pretend to win the debates that way. That's why, and that's where I'm going, that's why on each one of these debates you need to be advised. And that's what is important. What is the role? Where I'm going with this explanation? Sometimes we criticize politicians because they don't know this or they don't know that. It's obvious. No politicians, no person, sorry, whatever the responsibility they have, no one knows everything. And politicians are not exceptions. Politicians are not somebody who is mentally overdue. I mean, they are normal people. That's why it's important to establish the right connections with the right advisors for taking the right decisions. And that's exactly the point I'm going there. Sometimes from the social movements I lived, presumption, let's say restriction to attend and to lobby politicians, because politicians are not somebody I can trust. The problem is that then the decisions are taken are made about the majority of the, let's say, influence lobbyism that is made on that or that institutions. The way to reverse this is to establish in the networks with the right lobbyism. And I'm using this word in purpose. Lobbyism is perceived, obviously, when you have the influence of some economic interest group trying to influence what is happening right now in Davos, for instance. That's the lobbyism. And you have somebody taking decisions, and you have the lobbyists running around. You know that Washington, for instance, and secondly Brussels are the main places in the world where you have lobbyists based, doing lobbyism. That's a funny job, to be a lobbyist. I'll explain some anecdotes about this. But that happens. And that is what is important when you try to establish a connection with those who are taking the decisions that at the end are going to be transforming norms, in directives, in regulations, in resolutions, in wherever that needs to be further implemented. The question is, which lobby you trust most? And that's the responsibility of the politician. Let me put myself as an example. When you are in the parliament, I insist, you have in your desk all the piles of different papers of the different topics you need to deal with. On the legislation process that I'm going to explain as well, you need all the time to take decisions on whether I accept or not an amendment that somebody else has suggested, or whether I present an amendment that needs to be presented to the original proposal. When you are confronted with that decision, I insist, your technical knowledge is limited. You will receive hundreds, maybe thousands of suggestions of doing one thing or exactly the opposite. Two important conclusions. In order to compare, I need to have in my desk, I apologize for using myself an example. I mean, politician needs to have in their desk the recommendations of those groups, of those people, of those movements, of those analysts that, let's say, have a vision of the world, have a vision of reality of how or where we need to go, similar to yours. So you need to have this connection, and you need to work that connection. Second, you need as well to work on internal coalitions within the parliament, first at the commission level and then at the plenary level, to make that decision you take about one specific amendment or one specific proposal win. That means that you need to negotiate. That means that you need to have a margin of maneuver to say what is more important than the rest, of what I am, let's say, in a position to sacrifice in order to win something else. And that negotiations, I can assure you, is never easy, and is always frustrating when you are a small group, because you always lose. You always lose. Absolute majorities are excellent in that sense, I have to admit. I mean, doing politics when you are the group of the absolute majority is the easiest job in the world. You win everything. Never mind if you are right or not, you win, that's it. And when the arguments are not, let's say, when the discussions arrive to a point that you cannot argue, the final conclusion is simple. I don't care about what you think. I have the absolute majority, that's it. That's the conclusion. That's why I insist that absolute majorities are dangerous in whichever sense. But in that sense, it's important, I repeat, to have the connections with those who knows about the issue, and two, the capacity, and that's the job of the politician, to make the internal negotiations within the Commission and within the plenary to get the results you pretend. Obviously, we can, and if you want, we can talk about different examples or different situations that you probably might be interested in. I know what I know, and I know the topics I know. I mean, and some others I simply don't know, so I will not be able of saying anything. But on those that I know, I can simply tell you how important it is to establish these fluent connections. Let me put as an example what I'm saying this and why it's so important. The three conclusions I said that are crucial. Or maybe just to remind some previous explanations. I'm going to talk about how things are done in what we call the European Union. Is not that different, probably, what happens in at the, let's say, a one member state or one state member reality, or even United States, whatever. I mean, the logic is always the same. In that sense, let me just open this, and this is good. Yeah, right here. First thing, what is the European Union? Sometimes, one of the questions I always had to answer when I came back from Brussels or Strasbourg, whatever, it was, what is the European Union saying about this? That's one of the more uncomfortable questions you have to confront with. The European Union is not one telephone number, it's not one opinion, it's not one position. The European Union is the correlation of forces that at each time, at each moment, the institutions have. First question. There is no only one institution in the European Union. You have at least three crucial, important institutions, which means that if you want to be influent, if you want to be relevant, if you want to, let's put it that way, change some things, change the world, you need to focus on the three institutions, not only one. Not only one, you need to focus on the three. The current, let's say, organigram after last elections of the European Union, or the names you need to have clear in your mind are obviously the President of the Council. I'll focus a bit more. That's Donald Tusk. He has one responsibility. He is the President of the European Council, which is not the Council of the European Union, and which is not the European or the Council of Europe. There are three different institutions. Council of Europe, some of you are laughing. I can tell you that when I explain this, there are still a lot of people who still don't know the difference between those three institutions. You might find this funny, but I can tell you that when I explain this, I'm not happy when I see reactions of some people. Donald Tusk is the President of the European Council. That means the council that makes together the heads of state, the presidents and prime ministers. Nothing to do with the Council of Europe. That's a completely different story. It's also in Strasbourg, but that has nothing to do with this. But he is important. He is important.
Sorry, this is a permanent position?
Yes. Well, permanent. 5 years.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
I don't know, it's not.
Because before with the Council of European Union it was rotating,
Well,
wasn't
that.
Yes.
That's the 6 months presidency. That's a different story. That's what I'm going to go there. But he is important. He is the replacement of Van Rompuy. Probably you heard about Van Rompuy. And he's important because he's the one responsible of making the heads of state and the presidents agreeing on something. It's not for nothing that the president or the prime minister of a country, and notably some of them who are more influent, don't want somebody on that position who is too strong, who is too politician. They want more civil servant. Let me put it that way. That was exactly the figure of Van Rompuy, and that's a bit more or less, a bit less. He's probably a bit more politician in the sense of activism, Donald Tusk. He was former president of Poland, but in that sense it's true. I mean, you can imagine that, let's put it that way, Merkel, in that moment Hollande, or Cameron don't want somebody in the council telling them what to do. They want to tell them what to do, not the other way around. But he is one of the main important names. Then you have Jean-Claude Juncker, that you probably heard about the case, LuxLeaks, and all the responsibility that Luxembourg have, and he might personally have, on the, let's say, special conditions for big companies putting their bases in Luxembourg in order to be advantaged in terms of tax paying. He claims he knew nothing about this, but he was the prime minister of that period. And despite this, he had the support of the two biggest, actually the three main groups in the chamber. I will explain this later, to be the successor of Barroso, of José Durão Barroso, as the head of the commission. That's the commission. The commission is important for something that is crucial. He has the legislative initiative. He has the right to initiate legislation. If you look at the member state, if you look at one state, that's important to know if you want to be influenced. In one member state are the majorities in the parliament who decide what needs to be legislated and what not. There is a majority in the parliament who decides, well, I want to make a law on this or that. We have the majority, we don't have it. If we have it, we launch it, and then we start it. At the EU structures is the Commission who has the responsibility or the power, let's put it that way, to start a legislation process. If they don't want, nothing moves. There are some things that are by mandates. I mean, there are some aspects, for instance, the fisheries reform, it has to be done every 10 years. So it means that actually there are things that they cannot simply deny. But there are some specific regulations that if they don't want it, they simply don't do it. I was one of my biggest frustrations as an MEP was that I was leading as member of LIBE, of the Committee of Liberties and Internal Affairs, with one directive called the Equal Treatment Directive, which means that no person can be discriminated against in case of their age, their faith, their sexual orientation, or the fact that they could have a kind of a disabled condition outside of the labor market. This is blocked because it's true that in that case it's not only because the Commission did not the job, they partially did the job, but the problem is focused on the governments. I'm going to go there. But that means that sometimes when we focus on the EU in order to criticize, I'm saying this that might seem very basic, but one thing I'm very much worried about is that we sometimes tend to claim that the EU does this, or the EU does that, or the European Union is responsible for this or that. Sometimes it's not that. Sometimes the EU has simply not positioned about this. The problem is in another part. Here, the 6 months presidency. That's the presidency of the Council of the European Union. This is every 6 months changing, and is one member state who is taking the responsibility. It was Italy before the end of the year, now is Latvia, and since July is going to be Luxembourg. Okay, you might imagine that is not the same, that the presidency of the European Union Council is taken by a huge country like Germany or the UK or even Italy or France, that if the president is taken by Luxembourg or Malta or let's put for instance Cyprus. The impact, I mean, that to be chair of the 6 months presidency is not an easy task. That means, and that's what I'm going as well, that means that you are responsible to lead and to head all the discussions at not only at the minister level but down there. I mean, director generals, subsecretary of state, whatever, at the technical level as well, on all topics that are under discussions during that period. And that means that you need to have the people for doing this. You probably know that chairing a committee is not that easy. And second, if you are chairing a committee that has the goal of getting a legislative, let's say, result, is even less easy. But that's another institution. And finally, you have the European Parliament. He is Martin Schulz, German. He was the president of the European Parliament, the last mandate as well. He was one of the candidates to be president of the Commission. He simply lost in front of Juncker, and now he's going back to the responsibility of president of the European Parliament. Why I'm saying all this? Well, this we can jump. Mario Draghi. There are two other institutions that are very specific on that organigram. One, the European Central Bank, very important. We can talk about this if you are interested on. It's not a minor issue. It's not a minor topic. I mean, it is an important topic. So if you want, we can talk about these two. And we have another one that is also crucial, with the Foreign Affairs, let's say, representation. Mogherini is a profile that is a bit more active than the one we had before, who was Baroness Ashton. You know that the European Union has no competencies on foreign affairs policy. This is something that, it's a domain of the member states, not of the European Union. But there is one EU face moving around, representing the voice of the European Union, when there is one. And sometimes the main responsibility this person has is simply saying that there is no one voice of the European Union, which is not easy. But actually, that's one of the responsibilities we have. Why I'm saying all this? Because when you read what the European Union is, or when you need to influence the European Union, let's be specific. You are a social movement, you are an organization, you are a lobby that want to be influenced on the European Union. Who I should tackle? Well, you have to be very, very, very aware of the need of tackling the three of these institutions. You cannot forget one. You can simply not forget one. You have to go to the Commission, which means 28 commissaries in that moment. Some are more accessible than others, some are more capable than others. Number 28 is not for nothing. That means that every member state has one commissar. That's one of the things that needs to be changed, but it's like this. Which means that some of the, of the director generals are more relevant than others. It's like this. And that means that depending on what you want to tackle, you will be more or less influenced. It's supposed to be what we call the executive power of the European Union. It's what in a state we give the responsibility to the government. The European Union is rather the European Commission. Then you go to the Council of the European Union, the member states. That's important for what I'm going to explain later. You cannot simply focus on the Commission. Oh, I went to the European Commission and I had a meeting with them and they took the commitment off. And so what? And so what? I talked to the European Union. No, you didn't talk to the European Union. You talked to somebody in the Commission. That's not the European Union. To talk to the European Union, you need to talk as well to the member states. I'm saying this because sometimes we heard a lot of criticisms to the European Union. The European Union did that, the European Union did this, or this is because of the European Union, when in reality the problem is not at the European Union level, but at the Council level. Most of the frustrations that we are living those days and those years have to do with the economic sphere. Those decisions are rarely taken at the EU decision institutional level. They are basically taken at the intergovernmental level, which means the responsibility is not in Brussels, but rather in Berlin, in Madrid, in London, in Rome, in Stockholm, in Warsaw. There you will have the responsibility found. not in Brussels. In Brussels, we have nothing to do with this. In many of the topics we are confronting now, Brussels simply have no competence. Another discussion is whether Brussels should have responsibility on this. But I think they have. Let me put an example because that's important. What is the meaning, what is the logic of having one common currency? Not for the 28, but for most of them, the euro, and having 28 economical policies. You have one common monetary policy, but you have 28 economical policies. That cannot work. That cannot work. And he's not a radical leftist who is saying this to you. He's Jacques Delors. Well, I would not put himself at the, let's say, more extreme Marxist thinkers, but he was clear when the euro was created, telling the governments, you cannot have one currency if you have 28 policies. You need one common economical policy, and you need one fiscal policy. If not, it will be a problem when the situation, the economical situation, it will go down, as it has happened. Well, but that's important because sometimes we blame the EU or some things that they are not responsible of the EU as concept, as idea, but from the member states. And sometimes we shoot on the European Union when at the end the main responsibilities come from the governments of the European members. And then finally you have the European Parliament. 751 MEPs representing all countries, representing different families, and I'll go about this afterwards. I just end this, and I will make a couple of examples why this is important. Why I'm trying to explain all this structure, because when you try to focus on any decision you want to take, let's put an example. Well, I use the reform because that's what was more recent and the common discussion we've had. But we could use REACH if you are interested on chemical issues. We can use tobacco, which is another big issue where lobbyists are being very active. We could use data, personal data, which has been one of the topics that, as a member of the of the Committee on Liberties, was more at the stake, and is going to be right now after the events in Paris a topic for discussion that is not going to be easy to solve. Where is the limits of your privacy and of your, let's say, freedom confronted to security? That's the historical long debate that we have been confronted with. But these type of situations put them again on the table and make the discussion very difficult. And we can use, for instance, another example, which is the fisheries reform. I use this because that's a very clear example of the role of the scientists on these discussions. In others, it's a bit always more difficult. On the fisheries reform, it's very easy. Imagine that you have the responsibility, as we had in the last mandate, to draft and adopt and approve the reform of the fisheries policy for the next 7 years term. That means that obviously you have a lot of demands. You start by the Green Book, which you start to having ideas. The Green Book, you probably know, is the place where, well, you start discussion with several actors, and you ask what they think about this. You make proposals, and well, it's a pre-legislative document. Then you can start thinking or working about this. That's European Commission's responsibility. European Commission, as he has to be the one who is drafting the first text that is going to be discussed afterwards, they make, let's say, the gathering of the information, and they make a draft of this text, which is the reform. What they will have to confront with is with the pressure of what we call the sector. What is the sector? The sector is the economical interest of those who are living from the sea. fisheries, traders, whatever, manipulators, whatever. I mean, there are different ranges of responsibilities in the fishery sector. And obviously, what is going to be the pressure from that sector? Put us as few constraints as possible and give us the more, let's say, right of fishing as possible. That is going to be the demand. Why? Simply based on a specific figure. I am Spain, and in Spain we have that fleet. I have those fishermen around me. I am the Minister of Fisheries from Spain. I go to the Council and I say, that's what I have. In the period I'm drafting the first draft, I go to the Commission, or my people, normally it's not the Minister who is doing this, it's the people who is working for the Minister who is doing this. They go to the Commission and they say, I want that in the next legislation, the restrictions for this disease are disappearing, and I want public funds for this, this, and this, because that's what I want, that's what I need. Based on what? I repeat, based on the fleet I have. That's the approach. From Spain, from Italy, from Poland, from the UK, from France, from everybody that is having a specific interest on that field, on that sector. If this is not confronted with somebody telling them, wait, there is a problem. Fish in the sea is going down. There are some species that are simply disappearing. We cannot keeping the amount of fishing that we have been doing the last years. So you cannot commission, accept a quota of this or that amount for that species, because obviously there is not that amount of fish. Somebody has to go to the Commission and telling them, if you adopt this, you simply are killing the resource. If you are a responsible person, that's what I think that it should be done. Who are you supposed to listen? The scientist who is telling you, if you accept these quotas or this amount of fishing, you are simply killing the stocks. So you have to adapt your fleet to the stocks that exist, or the sector representation who is telling you, I have that amount of fleet, I have that amount of boats, and I need to give them the possibility of fish all this amount of stocks. The problem so far is that the lacking of one of the approaches made that all the decisions taken by the Commission led at the line of the pressure of the sector. That's exactly the same example that you can find in the tobacco sector, that you are finding also in the, I again insist, on the economical sector, on the agricultural sector. In every of the sectors you have to deal with, you will have this dilemma. In fisheries it's easy, because you can have somebody who's telling you there are that amount of tons of that species, so this is the limits, the scientific limits. Can I use the term MSY? Well, somebody come from the sector, I assume that not everybody, never mind. It's the limit where it's supposed until the what you can fish in order to make the stock sustainable. Forget, no problem. But the problem is that you have a scientific recommendation and you have the pressure of the sector. This double influence comes already from the first draft. From this you have a paper. This paper is sent simultaneously to the Parliament and to the Council. The Council, I repeat, the Member States, which means the ministers, join together and discuss. Every Member State says, well, I want this, I want that, I don't want this, I don't want that, I want more of this, I want more of that. Negotiation in the Council. Negotiation in the Parliament, exactly the same, starting first at the Commission level, which means the Commission of Fisheries Issues, and secondly at the plenary level. One big difference on the two processes. What do you think is going to be? I'm telling you, transparency. These are secret discussions. These are public. Here you know nothing about what is going on, about who is proposing what, about who is suggesting what, about who is pressuring on which sense. Here you know every single amendment, every single comma that somebody is suggesting. That's not a minor difference. That's not a minor, let's say, different way of acting. Never mind. There is a first draft adopted in the Parliament, a first draft adopted in the Council. Then you make what we call the, let's say, the trilogue, which means that we have to put the two texts together and negotiate in a table. Well, I buy this, I don't want this, I don't want that, this, well, that's more technical issues. And then at the end, if there is an agreement between the two institutions, you have the final paper, and then you vote, both in the Parliament and in the Council. If it's adopted, fine, bingo, you have the final text. This is a very long process. This is a very long process, and a very complex process, and a very delicate process, which means that when you start a campaign of lobbyism, you have to be aware of two things. One, you cannot start here and forget about the issue. Forget about this, that's completely useless. And if you start something, you have to be ready to follow all this. And I'm not talking about 1 month. I'm talking about sometimes about some years. What I'm saying this, because that's impossible for one small organization. You need, I come back again to the first of the conclusions I had when I work on the arms trade. You need platforms. You need synergies. You need huge groups of organizations working together, coming from different member states, because you will have to influence the different governments. So you need a huge, let's say, group of campaigners to do this. First conclusion. Second conclusion, you need time. You need time. You need to spend time analyzing text, lobbying, knocking at the door of everybody that you think it can be influencing something and others. Some doors are going to be closed to you. Some are going to be open. Use those that are open to you. Well, that's how it works. And third conclusion, you need expertise on this. You need somebody who can tell you exactly the consequences of accepting or not one amendment. In a complex dossier, changing one figure, changing one comma, changing one date, can change completely the outcome of the text. You need somebody, a specialist, a scientist, somebody who reads this and tells you, if you change this, if in terms of 0.1 micrograms of pollution, of microparticles emitted by the cars, you accept this, the consequence will be that amount of millions lost or win by that company. The same happens in all sectors. So you need somebody reading this at the scientist and analytic terms, which means that if you are campaigning on something, you need to dedicate a part of your budget to people who is not only making huge demonstrations or who is making, let's say, an online campaign for gathering supports of e-cards, but somebody who is spending hours in their desk, in their computers, understanding what is going on. Because when you are here, I need to go with a list of amendments to my Mikel Ortega, and he has been suffering a lot about this, and asking them, well, listen, I have these amendments coming from the Popular Party, or coming from the ECR, or coming from the Socialists.
1,800 amendments.
Exactly. I mean, not easy one. And I need to know which ones I can accept, which ones I cannot accept, and which I can negotiate. I mean, sometimes you need to do, well, as I want this, I can give back that. It's not what I want, but if I give them to the Italians, maybe the Italians will accept me this, that for them is less important, then that's politics. That's negotiation. You need to be ready to negotiate here and here. And that's exactly what, well, that's the number of MEPs that you have per country, which makes also strategically very important the lobby that you can do with all of them. And here you have the groups, which is also important because depending of the topic, you will have more or less. There are normally two axes in politics. In general, that happens, but also in the European Parliament, you have two axes of making coalitions. One has to do with the, let's say, political approach, from left to right, and all the, let's say, combinations in the middle. Then the Europhobes and the Eurosceptics here, and then you have the national approach. For instance, you can find in the socialists or in the, actually in most of the groups, you can have a huge cleavage in between the northern and the southern countries for several topics. And then you can get coalitions in between several groups trying to get at the end the final amount of support that you wish to have in one or the other. Well, that's the situation coming from Spain. Don't worry about this. And that's a bit, well, that's the commission. That's the commissions that you have to focus on. That's important for what I told you in the beginning. When you are 25, 50, 54 MEPs, you can simply have one for each committee, and it's going to be the expert of that committee. When you are one, you have to follow development, international trade, budget, budgetary control, economical affairs, social, etc., etc. You have to be everywhere. To be honest, it's impossible to be commanding all those topics at the same depth. So you finally have to choose a bit and to be a bit specialized on something. Well, that's a bit the story of what I've been living does. Well, that's the delegations have nothing to do with the calendar. Well, the calendar might be useful because it's also important. In the parliament, you have three types of meetings, of reunions. One is what we call the week of commissions. That's the pink color. Is when the commissions are meeting themselves in order to make the discussions. Commissions obviously are formed by a don't law principle, following also the plenary composition of the groups. Then you have the blue one, which is the week where the groups are preparing themselves for the week after. That is the plenary sessions. The red one which has place in Strasbourg. If you want, I can explain why we have two seats. It's a boring issue, a dramatic and terrific issue, but it's up to you. There is a lot of topics. The green one has to do with what we call territorial job. That's, I mean, jobs in everybody in their circumscriptions. Never mind. That's simply to give you an example of when you want to be influent in politics, you need to have all these in mind in order to be successful at the end. I can say that, and I'm finishing here for now, if you once again take the experience of the fisheries reform, after several attempts of having reforms that are always on the side of the sector, for the first time, last mandate, last reform, talking about the fishery, what we call the basic regulation, not talking about the budget, that's a bit another story, not that positive one. But on the basic regulation, we got for the first time the outcome that was not expected by the sector because all these at times claiming here was done, which means there was a coalition. It existed a coalition at the European level of organizations coming from different sectors with one goal, that was the basic resolution, that was the law that was to be adopted at the end of the mandate, working together with the same objective, influencing that text, working with the parliamentarians at both levels, member states and parliament, and obviously the commission, and influencing also the public opinion. This made the last fisheries reform, to me, one of the most progressive that has been adopted in the history of the European Union, which does not mean perfect, but it means at least something that, compared to the previous one, was not that bad. It was, to be honest, rather a victory of that way, and if you would put it in the other way, it was a defeat by those from the sector who wanted a typical reform simply favorable to their interests. That's what we're living, because we implemented the three main conclusions that for me are crucial. Building synergies, making strategies at the short, medium, long term, and using scientists, analysis, in order to base the campaign to be more influent to their politicians or the political institutions that we want to be influenced at. For me, this is it right now, but I'm completely open to your questions, demands, if you want specific examples, or if you want specific, let's say, request on some specific topic, feel free to ask. In some I can give you some answers, in some others probably not, but anyway, we'll try.
Questions, comments?
Yes, thank you for this talk. Very informative with a lot of things, details that I think many of us were unaware of about the European Union. You mentioned something about that kind of struck me as important, that there are some doors open and some doors closed.
Yeah.
And you have to use those that are open. Now, in my brief experience as activist, I found that there are no doors open. That you have to open them. And you have to make them open. So, from a perspective as activist and also from European
Which topic are you dealing with?
Environmental issues in my country, and yes,
What-
one or two legislators might have the door open always, but the rest are usually closed, and you have to actually go and do a lot of work just to open the door. So, I mean, from a European perspective, what determines that a door is open? How do you? What is it? Is it just ideological affinity?
Not always.
So, or if
Not
not,
always.
how are these doors open or opened?
Well, which country are you coming from? Italy?
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know the Puerto Rican experience.
But we
Anyway.
have some Italians here. Right?
Yeah, I know. Anyway, sometimes, allow me to speak you very, very personally and very openly. Sometimes has nothing to do with ideology. Sometimes it's more a question of personal feeling. I know this is to make thesis is not something that you can put in a database. I know this. But sometimes it's simply the fact that you knock the right door, but you knock the right doors in the right way. I mean, if you go to a door and you make a slice with your hand, with your leg, and you expect the other person behind the door to open his desk in order to work together with you, probably it will not happen, regardless of the ideology of the person who is behind the desk. On the other side, the other way around is also true. I mean, you can go with a very good manners, you can go in a very good way, you can try to be very open, very useful in your capacities, and still find the door closed. So both extremes happen. But one thing that is important is to make, I'll explain you something. Every time, every 5 years when the European Parliament is renewed, one of the first things the new MEPs, the new or the repeating MEPs, never mind, they have on their desks is invitations from all the lobbies based in Brussels to their gatherings. Renault, Fiat, whatever, the wine producers of whatever. They're sending you in your desk, all MEPs, they have the boxes to put the mail, and they put automatically on your box an invitation to go to a gathering where they will explain you how fantastic is what they do and how important is that you as MEP help them to do what they want to do. This is done by the huge industry, and this is done too by those groups of interests coming from the environmental issues, coming from the social movements, coming from the social interests, whatever, also trying to do exactly the same thing. Who is coming to my party? That's the first way to know who is going to be or not of help. Who is going to open you the door or who is not going to open you the door. Obviously, when I have these invitations, I go to the parties I want to. As an MEP, I have the right to. Nobody bans me to go to the Reno or to the Repsol gathering. I simply don't want. But if the Ocean 2012 is coming to Brussels, making a gathering or an event, inviting the MEPs to explain what they are going to do on the reform campaign, I go to that party. Which means that actually Oceans 2012, they have a list, as Repsol have, as Renault have, as Volkswagen have, of those MEPs that are more keen to open the door when I go to the parliament to work together with this. That's an example of how this goes. That's the first step. Once you have this step done, you have a main list, you have a first list of contacts, you start working. The fact that you have somebody inside that, that helps you with your job is crucial, because if you have somebody in the first goal, which is not easy, to have at least somebody in all the groups. If you are a lobbyist, you will try to find somebody in all the groups keen to listen to you, which does not mean that they will help you. That's a different story. There are two steps here. One is listen to me, second one is do what I think or that we think that needs to be done. But for doing this, you need to have a contact on each group. That's the first step. Some groups you don't even have access to. That's true. That's true. But at the end, you have to count. How many do I need to win some amendments or some proposal? That's the first thing. And the second thing, once you have the door open, it's very important to try to keep that door open. And there is where I insist the personal feeling is very important. One way of keeping the door open, and it's not a minor issue, is being useful to that person you are trying to have some help afterwards. How? Well, providing them with information, helping them to create a discourse that is going to be useful. If I have to go to a commission or to a committee where it has to be discussed, I don't know, how many cod needs to be fished in the Northern Sea. Well, first I know nothing about cod, I know nothing about Northern Sea, and I know nothing about what are the sustainable limits of that, because I'm from the Mediterranean, and I'm, if you want, more expert on bluefin. Which means that the day I'm going to discuss about this, somebody can come and say, well, listen, the situation, if you want to do what you are doing with the bluefin tuna with the cod, you need to do this, this, and this. And you help them to do this. Then, when he will ask you to do something on their side, the connection is going to be done. That's called empathy. I repeat, empathy is the key word if you want to be successful. If you simply go to there saying because you politicians are doing nothing, probably the other person who is in front of you is going to say, well, okay, bye. I have many other things to do.
And I think trust, which is a word that has
Exactly.
come in a couple of times.
Empathy is one thing. Trust is the second thing to do. And it's important, trust. Exactly, it's important. Because, let's be frank, let's be honest there. Sometimes I simply take as granted what my advisor is telling me to do or is telling me to say. But I cannot contrast this. So I need to trust what he's telling me to do. How trust is built? Well, as in many other aspects of life, through time and through, let's say, connections. and through, trying to help each other. That's how politics works in the good sense. On the other side, you will probably find a situation where some of the doors that are completely closed to you is because they are open to other actors. You need to know this. Why? Because in order to know some specific doors, you need to know that some doors, it's simply useless to lose your time with them, because you know that they are a specific voice of other lobbies. So don't bother. Don't lose your time with them. Try to go for the others that are trying to help you. And that's easy to know. That's very easy to know. Simply, for instance, in the European Parliament, there is something that is very easy to establish profiles of MEPs. It's what we call the written questions. You can follow the daily activity of every MEP. What they say in commission, what they say in plenary, what they write, what they amend, what they vote. That's open. That's completely open. You can go to the public pages that you have there and to know every single one, what they do. That gives you an idea of who can be of help and who cannot. Still, I insist, this being done, personal feeling, and it's true, cultural approaches is also a must. I mean, sometimes with the same idea, somebody coming from a different way, if you have, sometimes the way Nordic countries approach some issues are different from the Southern. That's not simply topical, it's the way sometimes we approach situations. And the logic that we implement when we organize meetings. I mean, probably all of you come from an international sphere, so you know about this. You need to know about this in order to empathize with the people you have in front of you in order to make the right proposals that you want to.
In our experience from the, let's say, on the campaigning at the European level, doing lobbyists, is that, for example, it's quite useful when you have to prioritize where I want to work is to do a very quick analysis, which is like two axes of analysis. One is how far or how near is it in terms of ideological position, yeah. But the other one is also how much influential are these MPs into the groups
right.
and also in the general assembly. So basically, if it's very controversial to your position and it's both very powerful, then you all have to do is try to isolate them.
Exactly.
That's true. If it's they're very near to your position and they're very powerful, you have to maintain a continuous flow of information, etc. And if they are very against you and they are very low influential, don't use those kind. Because if they are not influential and they are very just in the other way, in the other side of your position, why to use them? You are not going to win anything with it. But and if they are in the middle, then you can provide them with information, try this sort of, content fullness of law and win-to-win situations, providing these sorts of issues. It's also like you have to do this sort of analysis, not just going to knock every 751 MPs. Okay.
It's impossible. So if some words needs to be internalized by you, empathy, trust, synergies, strategy, in the good sense of the term. Strategy means think at short, medium, long term, not simply an explosive way. I mean, you need to be a bit passionate. I mean, politics is complex because life is complex. It's simply that way.
When campaigning on the fisheries issues, the campaign took 5 years. So it makes if you don't establish this sort of short, mid, long-term strategy, you just get lost in the process. So,
one very little addition to this is that also what I had in mind is the way that for instance, coalitions and movements make doors open by making the issues public and visible, and then the parliamentarians start wearing also shaming strategies of parliamentarians for the positions they take or the alliances they make with some private interest, etc. So
there is something that is very useful, and they did it, and I think is important. Shame and name is important. Shame and name is important. Today with technologies, you can know who is in which side. For instance, if you are in a campaign running for the European Parliament? One very simple thing. These are my proposals as movement, as organization, as group. What are you going to do with the TTIP? What are you going to do with the reform of the fisheries policy? What are you going to do with the data protection regulation? Tell me now that you are running for. Because when you are going to be elected, I'll control, I'll command if you are doing what you say you would do when you were running for the post. So that's one thing, naming and shaming. The other way around as well. They did something that is very, in terms of impact, is very useful, is making a list of the involved MEPs and putting red, yellow and green marks to those MEPs voting on several key amendments depending on the sense they voted for or they support it or not. Naming and shaming is important. Recognizing who is doing what you think is the right thing is also important. Is also important from your side. Obviously others are going to blame you. I can tell you there are some parts that I simply, me personally, I cannot go. There are some ports that if I land there, I'll be stoned because, well, because you're true. But it's true. But on the other side, I mean, you need to be clear there. So naming and shaming is important. Recognizing and giving credit to those who have been supporting the ideas you think are the right ones is also important. Because then, if you do this, you will have an ally too. Because you will give that person as well, not only their recognition, but also you will give them something to use when, well, sometimes things are not going to be as easy as sometimes seem to go. And that's important too. So that's a very good tool. Sometimes you simply cannot have nobody to put a green light. Well, then you have to be honest as well and you do it. But if you have, you simply have to do it too. Sorry, there were two hands there. One there or?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't quite get if the advisors are, if by advisors you mean lobbyists? And
not only, but also.
okay.
Yeah.
Because you started your talk saying that
Yeah.
nobody knows everything.
Exactly.
And MEPs have to deal with so many issues, and
Sure.
we can't have always the people that have all the knowledge in their heads available.
Sure.
But I don't really understand what does lobbying have to do with that. I mean, is the lobbyist going to be the one who is,
No.
for you consider them to be your
No.
sort of advisors, or because?
No, I'm saying something. I mean, all the political groups, they have their advisors. I mean, a political group, you have MEPs. I'm talking about the European Parliament. I mean, in all Parliament, you have MPs or let's say elected people and advisors. For each topic, you have an advisor. I mean, in each group, you have an advisor for fisheries, an advisor for social politics, an advisor for foreign affairs, advisors who are paid for advising the MEPs on this. Lobbyists is a group of interest.
Exactly, okay, so that's clear.
A lot.
I thought you were using them, you were interchanging.
No,
between-
but what I'm saying is that if you are an MEP, you can choose which group of interest you follow and which not. To put you an example. When I have to discuss about the regulation of how the fridge needs to be, let's say, labeled in terms of climate, energy, let's say, saving or efficiency, in terms of energy saving. The day I will have to vote on this, imagine I'm not member of ITRE. ITRE is the Research and Industrial Committee. I'm not member of ITRE, so I have not followed the discussions there. I know, to be honest, I know nothing on that dossier, because that's the first time I heard about this. I've been focusing on other aspects, and the day I have to vote on this is the plenary voting. Never before I had to focus on this. There were other colleagues who did it. The day I have to vote on this, I have the list, and I have several voting lists. My advisor, the one who is paid for the group for advising us, is making us a recommendation, who is supposed to be the one you are following, is done together with the MEP who is responsible for this. So I, that know nothing about this issue, I take the list, which means in that amendment you vote yes, in that amendment you vote no, in that amendment you abstain. That's the list. Number of the amendment and the sign of the vote. When you have to vote 1,000 amendments, you know very little or nothing of what you're voting. You have finger and you are following the paper you have in your hand. You trust your colleague in your group that has made that list. Because he's your colleague, he's from your group, you think similarly, and you know that if he's suggesting you to vote that way, it's the right thing to do. You trust. Not always happens, but anyway. No, it's true, sometimes you, for what I explained. But then I will have to, and that happens today as well, in my desk I will receive the same day one list coming from the lobby of fridge producers, telling me that I should vote that way, because for them that's important. And I can have as well a list of the WWF, Greenpeace, Silver Life, whatever, World Watch Institute, whatever. Also suggesting which sense I should follow. Normally, if you have been working on all these dossiers with those organizations, which are the group of interest I trust the most, my advisor, me or my colleague, have been working together with those organizations. Probably that's what happens usually. My list, or the one that is being done by my advisor, and the one is being done by the NGOs, if you want, is going to match, because probably have been made together. That's usually what happens, because the group of interest I trust and I work with is this one. But if you go to some other groups, if you go to the PP, or you go to the ECR, and sometimes to the Socialists, or sometimes to the Liberals, you will see that their voting list is matching not with the NGOs one, but with the sector one, because the group of interest they follow is the other one. Which means at the end that the group of interest is this, is a group of interest. And it's legitimate, I mean, somehow. I mean, you give me the information you think I need to have. Completely different story is what I will do with this information, and who I will trust and who I will follow. You are completely free to tell me or to send me what you want. Then I will trust you or not, depending of if we share more or less the role. That's my perception of doing politics. Others do differently. But my perception was that, and that's what I've been trying to implement, when you are acting as an elected person, you are representing a group of ideas, a perception, a vision of the world, and a vision of how this world should move. Which means that you are supposed to listen to those who think like you, and to make, as what we said a bit, the transmission of this request to the legislative texts. That's how I see an elected person should act. Others think a different way. But that's what I mean by following or not. But then at the end, you are the one, the MEP is the one responsible for pushing or not the button. So he's the one who is going to be blamed for whatever he does, nobody else. You cannot say, oh, but he told me that. The button was pushed by you. So you are responsible, so you need to be aware of this.
Make sure you don't mix the lists.
Sometimes happens, yes. I mean, you try not, but it can happen. You can lose your paper sometimes. It never happened to me, but I know some people who are. Well.
In fact, I know some dossiers that afterwards there was very close votation, and afterwards some MPs say, hey, we are really sorry, we did the mistake on this amendment.
Oh, sure. Well, that's
and it will have completely changed the picture.
Sure. No, but it is.
It happens.
But
It's
so
very human.
Can Can I just very quickly as a comment in what you just presented, like the claim that lobbyists make the decisions would be valid, you know, in this picture that you presented. Because like if you feel that we should represent the interests of somebody.
It's a question of numbers. It's a question of arithmetic. But it's true. It's a question of
That this comment is valid.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But let's be honest as well. I mean, this is a representatives' house. I mean, this is not a body that is put in the stratosphere doing whatever they want. I mean, this should be, let's say, a completely open and transparent structure where everybody could be accessing to. But when I say it's a question of numbers, is that it depends on how many MEPs or how many representation you have in each group following to several lobbies, that you will have one result or the other one. If the day you start with the parliament with the new MEPs, the gathering organized by Repsol is empty because nobody cares about this, and everybody's going to the gathering organized by Oceans 2012, the result is going to be completely different.
You know, I'm not sorry, jumping.
Sorry, comment in the teams.
And the last one.
Okay.
But as a comment, I mean, beyond pragmatism and beyond realism, which obviously is as you say, I'm just wondering, in terms of what you believe about politics, do you think that's the best, that's what a parliament should be all about? That's what an assembly should be all about? Because we shouldn't forget that parliaments, come historically are the continuation of what assemblies used to be in the past.
Yes, true.
So, and actually they are called representative assemblies.
True.
So my question is, like, how do you feel? Do you think that's what should happen in an assembly? Simply present what is out there and then...
No, the assembly...
Or should there be some sort of a debate as well?
But of course.
And stuff?
But one thing...
But not a debate that simply represents and you carry on representing your own ideas until the end.
But
Again, pragmatically, I agree with you. I know that's what happens.
No, it's not a question of being pragmatic. It's a question of being democratic, which is different.
Okay.
To me, democracy means that when you have a representation house like this one, this is a representation, not a decision-making house only. Representation means that these groups represent different perceptions, different views of life. The fact that this one, the PP, is bigger than this one, which are the Greens, is a reflection of reality we live in.
Why do you do politics then? Don't you do politics to try to change this?
Well, that's exactly why this is. I don't get the point. I mean, I don't say what is the word. This, people vote. And people vote this. The representation of the people who went to vote makes this chamber, which means that this is going to be the place or the correlation of forces that is going to take the decisions. If this is smaller and this is bigger, or this is smaller and this is smaller and this is bigger, the outcome changes completely. But the population decides what is the composition of this. That's what it's democracy. Then, once it's decided, you need to deal with what you have.
So as a minority, you can never win.
If you are a minority, it will be more difficult. That's why I always claim that instead of blaming for not having the results you want, the goal should, from my point of view, is to make these minorities bigger and to smaller the big majorities that now are too influent to some decisions. That's democracy. People vote what they want. It's free. I cannot force anyone to vote what they don't want. That's.
I think that the issue of majorities is it's a key element. You can have more dialogue in terms of themes, thematic themes, or exchange of point of view if you don't have majorities. If you have a majority, then that's out.
There is no discussion. I mean, I'll put you in another way. When you have a discussion, and it happens sometimes, in the discussions, many times, Sometimes and many times, yes. Yeah. Depends on the topic. But when you have a topic, and normally you have what we call the speaker of the responsible, the drafter. Each group nominates one person to be negotiator. Fine. You have a topic, and you have one member of each group sitting on a table discussing about one topic. You are not having a debate in equal terms, because the person who is representing the Greens, they represent 50 votes, but the people who is representing the PP is representing 221, which means that if in that meeting this representative and these representatives agree, the others, we simply can forget about this. But because it has nothing to do with the arguments, it has to do with numbers. I repeat.
But you're saying then that everybody who's elected from a certain, let's say, ideological position or party would be static in his or her opinions throughout the 5 years and never take another, I mean, that's a little bit, I don't know.
No, I'm not saying this.
Like within a parliament, the
No.
things can also be changed.
Of course. That's why, exactly because this is not that way, that's why it's important when you are trying to influence this, try to know who in every group might have a different opinion and trying to break the official. I mean, try to think in complex terms. It's not that the 221 do always the same thing. It's not always that way. You can have the representative of this, or the speaker, or the rapporteur doing that way, or the shadow rapporteur doing this, but you can work with somebody else who might not be agreeing with what he's saying. Well, that's your job as lobbyist. That's your job as lobbyist. That's the job of the lobbyist, try to get somebody who is not following the advice and try to break this. That's what I mean, nothing is black or white. It's a question of understanding the complexity. What I'm trying to say is that not because you are a politician, you are presupposed to have a position on that on one topic or the other. I mean, when I talk about empathy and trust and making lobby and making advising, it has to do with this. Put names to the person. They are persons. They are not labels. They are persons. You can try to connect with some of them more than with some others. Generally speaking, there are topics that are easier than others. That is true as well.
Thank you. Yeah, that's it.